Hello, today I want to talk about radical change of perspective. I see this as a valuable tool to find the truth. Recently, I published a video on YouTube that described my appreciation of mining then and now that had developed after visiting various mining operations in Germany and a spa, and then thinking about what contributions does Bitcoin mining have to our society today. In this video, I described how my work as an integrated circuit designer at the nanometer level connected essentially with this kilometer size eyesore, this deep dig for lignite coal in Hambach. And I feel radical change of perspective really helped me to realize the connectedness of problems and provided motivation for change. So I think it is important to dig and drill into this a little more. And so here we go. Drill, baby, drill. I like to share a personal example of radical change of perspective. Here on the bottom left, you see me and my bicycle at the airport in Santa Ana after riding my bike there. And then you can see the view out of the airplane when I'm traveling at 100 miles per hour to San Jose to attend some corporate business. And so it is really profound to think about one mode of transportation where I'm all powered by my own energy, and then I'm essentially shuttled around in a very complicated system, relying on the perfect execution of many participants. Well, hopefully the door panels are all fixed on this plane, but it is important to appreciate the capabilities that we have today in our developed society. Here's another nice example about a change of perspective. This is going to talk about the Pixida home office morning commute. In the map on the left-hand side, you can see at the top in orange my former corporate commute, essentially 3 miles to the local office to a cubicle. And I was mostly concerned to not break a sweat so that my coworkers didn't suffer during the day. Now in blue, you can see essentially my new morning commute, which essentially leads uh, sort of back to my home, but it's a commute over 16.8 miles and 1,600 feet of climbing, and it takes about an hour and 40 minutes. And on these rides, I get really some great ideas, and I just want to share a few key moments here. So you see on the right, like a picture from a local lake. The sun is just rising over the Santa Ana Mountains. So this is close to my home. And then essentially here on one ride, I essentially found money on the road. So in America, if you just pay attention, you just have to bend down and you have some venture capital that you can use in your own business. Then later, we are getting closer to Bomber Canyon, which is south about 8 miles from where I live. And then I start to see essentially the target of my commute. This is sort of the turnaround point at the top of Bomber Canyon. And then as we enter Bomber Canyon, we get closer to our target point. And then finally here, the final ascent to get to the top of it. And so you can see here myself sort of in the picture, at least a projection of myself. So I get a lot of great ideas when I'm riding my bike. There's oxygen flowing around and I'm alive. And it makes a completely different energy level than this morning commute to the corporate offices. So I'm really happy to be now on the bike and on the move. Mountain biking is also a great activity to think about the differences between tactical and strategic perspectives. At the top there, you can see a rattlesnake, and this is a tactical challenge because how are we going to get past this snake? At the bottom, you see essentially our long-term view long distance view, where are we going to ride today? And so it is important to have both of these perspectives in mind. But if you only follow tactical moves, you end up probably in a ditch. I now like to talk about how most of us see the world. Mostly, I think, first of all, we think about ourselves. And I think this is actually already ingrained in our DNA because we are built out of 10 billion cells. And these cells essentially are at the end of a long evolutionary process where the most greediest of cells were successful. So thinking about yourself is perfectly okay. But now, if we look around, there are people around us. There is maybe my family, and there may be a community, our city, state. And so there are essentially many, many me's. We form a society, but if we all stay disconnected, it's just many me's. Now, these many me's, actually, they are all connected. We all have relationships. Thanks to the internet, we can be connected with people in different continents. We can have friends everywhere. And so when we start to collaborate, then humans can do really amazing things. I found this picture here from the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. And so there's a large group of people that is synchronized and creates really a very amazing display of art. Now, leaving the world of art, I was thinking about this picture here that really shows what human beings have been able to achieve by collaborating with each other. This is the most amazing story, and this happened essentially at the time that I was born. So, thinking about these moments is very, very powerful. Now, I sometimes ask myself, why are now so many other countries trying to go to the moon? Been there, done that. What's the value for society for the 10,000th person to climb onto Mount Everest? There's just a big pile of trash now in the Himalayas. So I sometimes ask myself, are we really focusing on the new challenges, or are we just trying to repeat something that has already been done? Here I like to think a little bit about the perspective of a billionaire. Now, I may not really have the right background to do this well, but we can try. So I think as a billionaire, I'm gonna feel I'm so much bigger than everything else and everybody else around me because, hey, I'm loaded, no? Money is power. And so then I have essentially maybe a mansion in New York, and I may have another mansion in Florida. I may have a golf course, or I may even have a jet. How about a yacht or an island? You read the news and you know rich people can afford a lot of stuff that normal people don't have. Now, how do the other people look to this rich person? Um, I think here maybe they just see them as pumpkins, and I'm reusing here this pumpkin symbol that I used when I talked about how Fidelity is essentially looking for people to buy cryptocurrency now easy without having to actually learn how crypto trading is done by essentially supporting this. So if me, the rich person, is seeing all these pumpkins, I may essentially think about, well, every pumpkin has a little something, a little change, and if they give up the change and I can sort of get them to send me the change, that's all going to add up. And so it's going to make a very beautiful pile of money for myself. I like to talk about how we inherited a lot of technology and infrastructure from previous generations of innovators. Here on the left side, you see a quote from President Obama, where he essentially said that any entrepreneur who is building a business now essentially is leveraging a lot of the infrastructure, the roads and bridges that were built by previous generations. And so when I think about this picture, essentially we find roads, bridges, water, and sewer, and then on those accomplishments, then next generations, they build electricity, they build cars, they built the telephone system, and then integrated circuits were discovered, computers, the internet, and then today everybody's talking about artificial intelligence. And if I now connect this to the coal miner from my mining video, and I think about all the contributions that they made to society by digging out the energy from underground that essentially was critical to make steel and build this infrastructure, maybe we can put this coal miner here somewhere in this space where the telephone, electricity, and cars were developed. So essentially, when we find nowadays a CEO who can get a $47 billion stock option bonus package, then this is only possible because he lives in a world where there is so much infrastructure that suddenly the value of one company can be so large that such a pay package becomes possible. Here's another great picture to think about radical change of perspective. You probably have seen this before. This is Earth Rising, a photo that the astronauts took when they were on the moon. Really beautiful picture, and it shows the beauty of Earth, but it's also not so big anymore when you get that far away. So home far away is kind of a thought here. Now, if we combine radical change of perspective with purpose, then this is something meaningful. And I'm thinking now back again at the miner, and these men, they must have had purpose, because if you go 800 meters underground to dig out coal, that takes really guts to do this. Now, what happens if we remove purpose from the radical change of perspective? I like you to think about maybe one word that would describe radical change of perspective without purpose. I'll give you a few seconds here. Well, I'm thinking about tourism. Essentially, the things that I did when I visited the mines in Germany, this was tourism, and we kind of accidentally visited these amazing places, saw this giant technology, and then things connected in my mind. So tourism can also be a source of change. But if we then combine radical change of perspective and a purpose, then we can now really think about positive change and looking at history. Now, today, we have essentially cleaner ways of creating electricity. And so it's important for our society to embrace these new clean technologies so that we can kind of avert the climate crisis that is now heating up every day. And so you hear a lot in the news about MAGA, and I don't have to tell you what MAGA is. I'm thinking we need something bigger than MAGA. And as an engineer, if I think about something really big, I'm thinking about mega. Mega is essentially 10 to the power of 6. And for me, mega is essentially make Earth great again. And you look at Earth here in this picture, you can't see the United States. It's really one small little planet that is beautiful and that we should try to preserve. In my mining video, I had talked about how a tankless water heater is a great engineering analogy for the Bitcoin or cryptocurrency system. The temperature increase was the Bitcoin value, the fuel was essentially fear of missing out. And that has essentially some undefined energy density. The profound aspect of the system was that it does not have any value tank. And so we cannot really expect that there will be warmer water when our turn comes up, when we are on the other side of this water heater. Now, when you look around in the news, you find quotes from Warren Buffett, who predicts a bad ending for Bitcoin. Is it a doomed investment? I actually don't like that somebody wrote here investment, because based on my understanding of the system, there is actually no investing going on at all. The essence here is it's just a good old Ponzi scheme. When my friend Rainer in Germany, who is also a solar expert, reviewed my video about mining, he observed that I had not even discussed that different crypto coins, and there are 20,000 or so of those, more than 100 coins per country, that I didn't discuss how different crypto coins have different carbon emissions impact. And first of all, my video was much too long, as the statistics on YouTube show. Most people don't really have that much time to invest into educational videos like the one I'm making here today. I hope you are still here with me, but I'll just assume you will at some point maybe come back. So why didn't I even talk about this different impact of carbon emissions? You may have heard that Bitcoin uses a mechanism, proof of work. Essentially, updating of the blockchain happens after the Bitcoin mining centers have done a big chunk of work and used up a big chunk of electricity. So we can think about it, this system creates more toxic ash. On the other hand, there are cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, which are based on a principle of proof of stake. And so this will ultimately produce less toxic ash. However, there is still a system of computer servers. All this needs to be built. And the question is, why and what for? And so thinking about this, uh, essentially discussing the merits of one versus the other, to me, is like discussing, is it better for me to smoke cigarettes without filter or cigarettes with filter? Ultimately, I have to say all smoking is bad, and then we should just say no and stop smoking. So it's really, for me, that simple. Um, any of these cryptocurrencies are just Ponzi schemes. And so maybe they would even sell if somebody would introduce a Ponzi coin. You may ask, why am I really so negative on cryptocurrencies? Well, if you read the news, you can find now that the presidential candidate of a major party is now sort of embracing cryptocurrencies. And so there are various articles in the news where this candidate essentially calls for the US to be the crypto capital of the planet in an appeal to the Nashville Bitcoin conference. And to me, this is just plain wrong. So we definitely don't want to go down this route. I truly love the internet. It's a great means to provide radical change of perspective without even leaving my own desk. I Googled about the Bitcoin Nashville conference and found this picture here, a small group of insiders kind of scheming how to take advantage of future speculators. There were panel discussions like pushing innovation without a soft fork. And if you buy your cryptocurrency at Fidelity, you probably think that the soft fork is like this plastic fork that I put here on the right-hand side, but it's a technical term in the cryptocurrency space. There was some technical advice about tax avoidance strategies. because crypto gains are taxable. Also on the internet, you can find stories about the Bitcoin billionaires. We have to ask ourselves, why are there 20,000 cryptocurrencies? And ultimately, I think every new cryptocurrency provides an opportunity for the creators of these coins, be it the Dogecoin or Bitcoin, or maybe even a Ponzi coin. They can essentially make a lot of money by creating new coins. So there will be essentially a glut of coins at some point. I think we don't want to have the crypto bros run Social Security 2.0. This will not be good for the US. Now, in Business 101, you find that a cash flow analysis is the examination of the cash inflows and outflows of a business to determine a company's working capital. When we look at the cash flow of cryptocurrencies, we find essentially that the dollars immediately flow from the speculators that join to the creators of the system. And that's why Warren Buffett warned that this is essentially doomed, because ultimately you run out of the pumpkins who are willing to buy the 20,000 first crypto coin. So thinking some more about the crypto coin system, I think this is really like financial cancer. And I try to find a picture that can show you kind of drastically what does crypto actually do to your finances. And here I found this picture of this dog. And the good thing is there's actually a happy ending for this dog because he ultimately was operated and saved. However, if we think about the Social Security Administration and Social Security, we have to ask ourselves, will there be a happy ending for this system? You can hear already in the news, people are discussing Social Security will run out of money. Sometimes I think there may be too much freedom in America. If you think about cigarettes, it has been known since I was little that cigarettes are bad for people who smoke. Well, the taxes on cigarettes have grown over time higher and higher, in part to kind of discourage people from smoking, but you still find young people who start smoking, which doesn't make any sense to me. I ask myself, why are we even allowing this to happen? People get addicted to this stuff and then sort of they pay and ultimately they get sick and die. Um, we saw the story about FTX, how essentially one of these crypto billionaires, paper billionaires, was using the money that he got to essentially lobby Congress to make favorable rules so that the Ponzi scheme of crypto coins could continue. And then in 2022, Fidelity essentially offered crypto in 401k accounts. And to me, this is really criminal. Why would any responsible financial advisor actually recommend that you play the lottery? It doesn't make any sense. We have to ask ourselves here, are politicians our good shepherds? Now, anybody who has seen the Mafia knows protection has its price. And there is this interesting quote from Oscar Ameringer. It says, politics is a gentle art of getting votes from the poor and campaign funds from the rich by promising to protect each from the other. So that's kind of what politicians do. And so I think for us, it's important to protect our freedom to vote. Now, when we think about protect the right to vote, I'm thinking about this electoral college map from 2016, where Hillary Clinton lost with 227 electoral college votes to Donald Trump's 304 votes. And this result came essentially out of an election where Hillary had 3 million more votes than Donald. So the Electoral College system in the United States doesn't really count all the votes in the United States. It's a system where there's essentially a small number of states. Here in this example, it's probably 10. And the voting in these states is essentially determining the outcome of the election. And so by winning a few 10,000 votes in particular states, Donald was able to get more electoral college votes than Hillary and ultimately became president. The question that I ask myself here, should all pumpkins matter or only the ones that are in these battleground states? Sleuthing around in the internet, I found this interesting data set. It essentially classifies the voting districts in different states into how gerrymandered they are. Essentially, a gerrymandered district is a district where politicians in power select their voters to stay in power. A particular interesting example that I found was from North Carolina in 2012, where in the congressional election, the Democrats won 50.6% of the votes, and the Republicans won 48.75% of the votes. But when you looked at the representation in the House, North Carolina had a total of 13 seats, and the Democrats, with more than half of the popular vote, they only got 4 seats, and then the Republicans, they got 9 seats, even if they had less than half of the votes. I really like to share my thoughts about how 50.6% gets approximated with 4/13. We can think about the poor math scores that are frequently reported for the US. This result should actually be 7/13 because it's just a little bit more than half. And then I had to think about all these books that are written about stealing elections. Here's an example, How Voter Fraud Threatens Our Democracy by John Fund. When I look at these numbers, I really have to think there should be a book, How Vote Counting Fraud Threatens Our Democracy, because clearly this is not the representation of the actual voting that is happening. So I think maybe we should really look at this, that there is a purpose of power minimization. And when we look at it from this angle, we really have to say this is an amazing achievement by the minority. There's actually a story that I've heard where a politician was asked, how come your party got 9 out of 13 votes or representatives in Congress, even though you had less than half of the popular vote. And then this politician essentially said, well, we didn't find a way to get to 10. So the intent here is really to get as many votes in any artificial engineering way as possible. And here I ask myself, do we actually want fair elections? It seems there's a group of people where justice is a decision in our favor. Here's another interesting data set where an organization has looked into how different democracies work, and they have created a democracy index. And in this index, the United States is sort of in the range of the flawed democracies. And if you think about the numbers on the previous page in this example, I think you have to agree that this is flawed. Now, the interesting part to me is how the United States is then running around the world and is trying to tell other countries how to run their democracies and elections better. I mean, how are we going to Venezuela and are telling the president, hey, you just stole the election, if essentially where we are, you can get sort of 9 out of 13 without less than half of the vote? I mean, that's essentially kind of in the same spirit, isn't it? Now, I like to circle back to the radical change of perspective. I think it would be good for all of us if we could really put ourselves into somebody else's shoes and still feel some compassion. I think we would probably do our decisions and some ways of life differently if we were looking at our fellow citizens with more compassion. So after thinking about this situation, I really like to share a radical proposal for an improved system of democracy for the United States. And in that system, wouldn't it be nice if one voter actually had one vote? And the correctness of that vote might be guaranteed by applying blockchain technology to the vote counting process so that more than half of the votes also get more than half of the power in the system. Wouldn't that be fair?